On today's edition of Locked On Eagles, Gino and I are going to dive into our gut feelings about what the Eagles are going to do in the 2023 draft now that the main wave of free agency is over. Rule changes, Nick Sirianni comments at the owners' meetings, all that and more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome everybody to a Tuesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host, Gino Camilleri. We're your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, Monday through Friday on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Good to be back on the show. I was in Nashville for a few days for my brother's bachelor party. Was hanging out around the Titan Stadium a lot, Gino, and definitely looked at that stadium like, this is fun. I remember when we stole the soul of this team this year when A.J. Brown basically got everybody fired there. So made me feel good about the Eagles situation being down there.
You're lucky. I was hoping to go somewhere like that for my bachelor party to a football game. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but man, that's cool. I've never been to Nashville. I've heard nothing but great things. My fiance was there about 2 years ago, and she said that whole Broadway area is awesome.
It's a nice spot. I made the joke though.
The Eagles have a similar setup though, where it's like right downtown. Everything being downtown is super convenient. I like cities that are set up like that.
I'm very into that. I went to Panthers Eagles in Charlotte last year in 2021. Very similar vibe, so definitely a cool aesthetic. But I saw the stadium like, hey, everybody check out the football museum over there. And nobody really quite got the joke. I'm like, because they run the football. So definitely a cheesy football nerdy joke that the other guys in the group didn't get. But on today's edition of the show, as I mentioned before, got comments from Nick Sirianni, had some good things to say, specifically about some role players on offense that I want to get into, Gino. And then you mentioned it yesterday. Howie Roseman talked at his press conference. And one of the main things he talked about was his priorities about positions, right? He was kind of recapping free agency and the decisions they made, the guys they let go, and the players that they kept. And the highlight was what we know the Eagles do over the last 25 years. It's prioritizing both sides of the line, quarterback, receivers, and corners, basically the passing game on both sides of the ball. And you saw that with, signing Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, running it back with all those crucial pieces at those spots. And so, Gino, with that being said, now that we know that Terrell Edmunds is a safety for the Eagles and Morrow's at linebacker, and most of their moves in free agency, the main ones have been made. We're a month away from the draft now, literally a month away, which is crazy. Do you have kind of a hunch or any inclination of what you think the Eagles are going to do with especially those first three picks in the first two rounds?
On yesterday's show, I did a fun concept where I did 4 2-round mock drafts, and I had all of our fans vote on it. And I stuck to what the Eagles do. And for most of them, I went either offensive line or defensive line with one of those first-round picks. But at the same time, Lou, sometimes you have to do what works, and at other times you have to do and break tendencies in areas where it might not have been so glorious the past couple years. And I'm thinking about cornerback, right? How great, or how poor rather, have they been at acquiring talent through the draft at that position? Even Zach McPherson, I hate to throw him into that category. We still have yet to see what he is, but you're talking about the Sidney Jones, the Rasul Douglases of the world. And I mean, going back to the Nate Allen days, it's just been bad through the draft at trying to get those guys. They've had to go out and sign Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod. They had to trade for Darius Slay. They had to find their way and luck into James Bradbury being released from the Giants. If the Eagles want to get ahead of the 8 ball where they're not so reactionary and you're having to count pennies if you want to pay a 32-year-old Darius Slay and extend him, well, how do you counteract that? Use one of these 2 high picks on either a safety or a cornerback that's going to be cost controlled at least for the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, that's the thing, Gino. I kind of go back and forth with it because you saw those comments from Howie Roseman, and he talked about how these main positions, that's what they're going to invest in for the most part. It's what Andy Reid did. It's what they've been doing for 25 years, and they'll figure the rest out. It makes sense. That's what they did at running back and safety and linebacker and free agency. But So that's why I never fault them for going line heavy in the draft and receiver and anything that has to do with the passing game. But at the same time, you're right. At the same time, there are years where you can break tendency to go for those other positions because they are still valuable. And maybe not running back and linebacker, but the safety position is one that I'm okay with drafting early. So I hope eventually they do invest a premier asset in those spots. You don't have to do it the majority of the time. Again, it can be those other positions you prioritize, but I would like to see that. But, if I had to predict what I think they will do with those 3 picks, considering the age of these linemen on both sides of the ball, I'll guarantee you at least 2 of those selections are on linemen on both. They're going to take at least 1 offensive lineman and 1 defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds. And then I would also probably predict you're going to see a trade up or down. Howie Roseman has only sat still in the first round with his pick once since 2016, and that was in 2020 when he took Jalen Reagor. So, gun to my head right now, I'd say it's a lineman for sure, maybe 2, probably 2, and a trade. That's just kind of the Howie blueprint.
I've said over the past couple months that at the end of the day, I believe they'll walk away with 7 or 8 picks in this class. And to do that, you're not going to, one, be able to move up because you don't want to spend higher picks. Like, let's say you want to do a Jordan Davis type of move. Are you going to give up an additional 3rd round pick? Maybe not in 2023, potentially 2024, but I wouldn't bank on Howie Roseman trading future assets, especially when he has so minimal this year.
Right.
What I would expect him is, let's say up at 10, Lou, they're between 3 defensive linemen, right? Like, let's say it's Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness, and let's say your pick of the litter, who would the other one?
Nolan Smith or somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And they're saying, oh, a team wants to move up 2 spots, and we could still get one of these guys that we have right in that 1A or 1B tier, wherever you have them on the Eagles board, to get, let's say, a 3rd round pick and add a 7th pick, which then you could move back as well. And they do a lot of that on day 2 and 3, where they're okay going back a couple selections to get late round picks because they've landed on late round picks. And I mentioned how bad they've been at acquiring cornerbacks. I got to say, with Avonte Maddox, that's a 4th round pick. He's worked out great for you. The Eagles do great things with those 4th through 7th round picks in terms of Josh Sweat, Jordan Mailata. The list goes on and on, Lou. So let's say they get 7 or 8 selections at the end of the day. You're going to have to believe that if 3 of them or 4 of them are in the top 100, at least 2 are going to be on linemen either side of the ball. That's a guarantee.
Yeah, I agree. It was good to hear, though, how he mentioned corner specifically with those other pillars that he believes in. Definitely. Because in the draft, he really, as you mentioned, the last top picks he made was 2017, back-to-back 2nd and 3rd round, Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas. But outside of that, he's pretty much ignored the position early on in the draft. So to hear him say that he does prioritize corner, and we know that he's just been taking different routes over the years to go for it. And he showed by bringing back Slay and Bradbury how much it does mean to this defense. But I would like to see him show that in the draft. Again, when it comes to breaking tendencies, it's more about corner, Gino, and safety than it is about like linebacker and running back. I don't need them to take those positions early. It's safety and corner more so. But I will say this is the year that I think they'll definitely take multiple linemen. It could be, I don't know, again, are they going to move up? Are they going to move down? It could be a little bit of both, Gino. You look at last year, what did he do? He traded down with the Saints, but then traded up for Jordan Davis. So you could see maybe you move down from 10, you move up from 30, maybe you move down from 30 if a team wants to come up and get Hendon Hooker and pull a little 2018 circa Baltimore Lamar Jackson kind of move. So it'll be interesting, but I definitely would predict movement in linemen because, again, when you look from 2016 on, he traded up for Carson Wentz. The Derek Barnett pick was not theirs. It was the Minnesota pick, right? With for Sam Bradford. 2018, he moved down with Baltimore. 2019, he moved up for Dillard. It was only 2020 with Reagor because then he moved up for Devontae Smith. And last year, he moved, all 3 picks were jumbled around. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, man. The cool thing about it is it's predictable. It's predictably unpredictable what Howie does in the draft, which always makes our live shows entertaining.
I think you can also look at how much money they pay to certain positions in free agency and to what they extend their guys with. And look at Lane Johnson. They gave him $30 million in a single season. You want to believe that they love offensive linemen and they will continue to take them in the draft. Look at the money that they've given him, giving Lane Johnson, giving Jordan Mailata. Oh, I said Lane Johnson twice. I meant Jason Kelsey in that conversation. Look at defensive line as well. Look at cornerback. I mean, it just goes to the old Andy Reid adage. Like, give me 2 tackles, 2 cornerbacks, 2 defensive linemen, and I'll build the rest. Yep, exactly. That's what they're going to continue to do. And Howie Roseman, man, we have to take a 30,000-foot view of this thing. They were just in a Super Bowl, Lou, and they have a top 10 pick. That, one, is either going to garner them the top player on their board by a mile. 2, it's a perfect position if a team wants to come in and get potentially that 4th or 5th quarterback. And 3, that 30th selection, that's now playing with house money, because you could go into day 2, get some assets from a team that wants to trade maybe a future first, maybe another day 2 to you as well. Howie Roseman has set himself up like a chess master right
where you
now.
could do anything, you know, like
literally anything, Lou.
What if you wanted to move up what if Jalen Carter was available, or Tyree Wilson, he wanted to move up? The cool thing is Howie likes to be aggressive and get top tier prospects, but at the same time, over the last few years, he's done a great job where he's kind of having his cake and eating it too, where he's not sacrificing quantity in drafts, because he's been able to accumulate all these first round picks he's built up for years and years because of that Carson Wentz trade. He's been able to move down and up. So not only does he have short-term flexibility or long-term flexibility, but, you know, short-term aggressiveness as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see what he does, but definitely expect movement. And lineman central, it'll make a lot of sense. I am hoping, though, for at least one corner with one of those selections, but we'll see what happens. Gino, coming up next, I want to get more into the now before the draft and talk about Nick Sirianni's comments about some players on the roster. He's down at the owners' meetings and had some interesting things to say about guys like Quez Watkins and Trey Sermon. So we'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. The tournament is heating up. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. And it's not just March Madness, Gino. It's the NBA, it's the NHL, the NFL futures as well. I've been throwing some money on the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James back. I think they're going to get into the playoffs. Not as high on the 76ers in the East, even though they're hot. So make sure you bet on everything, NBA, college basketball, NHL, you name it, at FanDuel, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Again, don't miss out on your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase alongside Gino Camilleri. Gino, the owners' meetings are going on right now across the NFL. I think it's in Florida, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So a lot of news coming out across the league. You know, you're seeing all the Lamar Jackson stuff. I love that the Washington Commanders said they're not interested because they have Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. That made my day yesterday for sure. And Howie Roseman talked to the media on yesterday's show. You kind of recapped everything he had to say. Today, head coach Nick Sirianni talked to the media. And, Gino, I think 2 interesting things he highlighted were role players on offense. And one of them is wide receiver Quez Watkins, coming off a pretty down 2022. And then Trey Sermon at running back, who the Eagles acquired last year from the San Francisco 49ers, a 3rd-round pick in 2021. Only had 2 carries with the team. But, Gino, it was interesting to hear Sirianni kind of talk up Sermon. And I think it'll be interesting because Sermon, again, has not barely played in a year and a half, but he's got talent. He was a former 3rd-round pick. It's Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell. That's going to be a committee approach. I actually think there's maybe a legitimate shot for Sermon to do something this year.
I think when you look into that comment and what he was really saying is that everything that we mention when it comes to the running back position in terms of running back by committee and getting the best out of each of those players, I think there's individual skill sets that Sirianni sees within Trey Sermon that he wants to put within this offense. And the great thing about that is you don't have one guy that you're paying $6-7 million to, that you have to give 20 to 25 snaps to, or respective touches a game, you have this freedom to not only play any of these guys who are costing you bare minimum, you can also still go out and draft a guy or get an undrafted free agent at that position, which I would guarantee that they're going to do as well. And Nick Sirianni trusts individuals on this team. If you have a skill set that he believes in, much like Quez Watkins, who we'll talk about in a second, he is going to point out the positives. And that's what we get caught up in a lot of the times, especially in the media, is the negatives of what these guys do. I saw Ruben Frank responded to somebody today mentioning Trey Sermon, and he said he only played, got two snaps last year. Yeah. 2 carries. Well, yeah, but what could he do with 10? What could he do with 15? I'd be open to that. A team picked him in the 3rd round, and not only a team in San Francisco, who their general manager is very good in acquiring talent, has a respective eye for it.
At that position, too.
At that position, out of as well as Kyle Shanahan, you have to believe that they just had other options there, that he got free from them, and maybe he is a threat to the Eagles offense, that he could be something that within 5 to 6 snaps a game, maybe he does something for you. But how he talked about Rashad Penny, saying that he was coaching in San Diego the same time that Rashad Penny was at San Diego State, talking about those teams. I'm like, I would have loved to hear what he had to say about Donnell Pumphrey and that selection. I'm sure that he ribs Howie Roseman every now and then for making that pick.
Yeah, Gino, and again, could this backfield be 2018 and totally underperform? And it looks like Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood and a regress Corey Clement. 100%. Absolutely. That's the risk you take when you go more value. But I think there's more instances across the NFL where when you take this route, it does work out. And maybe you don't get elite production at running back, but you get 3 guys that can, again, match what Miles Sanders did by 80%. Maybe it's not 100. They don't match exactly what Miles did, but it's pretty damn close. You saw that in 2017. Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount, and Corey Clement. Were any of them complete elite running backs? No. But as you mentioned with these guys, they all had individual skill sets that complemented each other really well. You had the thunder of LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi. You also had the unexpected passing ability of Corey Clement, pass catching ability. And so maybe that's what this group is. Maybe, Rashad Penny's your Jay Ajayi that just is super efficient but can't stay healthy, and now he benefits from being in a committee. Kenneth Gainwell's your Corey Clement, and maybe Trey Sermon's your LeGarrette Blount. I hope that's the outcome. But at the same time, I think they're taking the right approach in the backfield.
I think there's 3 outcomes that could happen. The 2015, where it was just a downright disaster. They didn't use those guys in the right position, and Ryan Matthews didn't turn out to what you wanted him to be, and DeMarco Murray was used.
That's true. Penny could be
always be that,
but he could also be Ryan Matthews.
He could also be that as well, Lou. And I think the middle ground is that 2018 team where you still did enough, right? I mean, Josh Adams, power to him. He wasn't the greatest player in the world, but he did enough. I don't think he converted a single 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. What a world now, Lou, where you don't.
But you're right. Like,
you don't have to trust anybody else besides the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Like, he could go and do that, and you have guys that can do that as well. And Kenny Gainwell and Darren Sproles with the Boston Scott type of role. I think that's a very good comparison for him. And
because remember Sproles in 2018 down the stretch, when he came back, that definitely helped the backfield. So again, they weren't incredible, but and that, like you said, that was with a non-mobile quarterback in Nick Foles. Jalen Hurts is going to make these running backs even better and open up everything.
That's the thing you have to think about, right? And do the Eagles go out there and add another tight end? And I mock them taking, let's say, Michael Mayer, if they really fall in love with a tight end in a year where Dallas Goedert is 28 years old, coming off of a Super Bowl season. Where have we heard this story before, Lou? Zach Ertz in the 2017 Super Bowl, a career year, they go out and draft a player in Dallas Goedert the same year that Zach Ertz was 28. So what if you get another premier blocking tight end, which opens up the 12 personnel, which makes life a heck of a lot easier for the running backs? Oh, and you have these 2 elite receivers on the outside where you could still add on top of Quez Watkins. Like, you don't have to get rid of Quez, right? He could still be a 4th receiver for you, Lou, but you could try and upgrade that position as well, where you have more versatility than just having Zach Pascal, right? It wasn't like, we could put Zach Pascal out there to stretch the field. No, he had a designed role. You knew what he was going to do. Same with Quez Watkins. You need a guy that could probably do a lot more in a few different areas rather than just a single player who is a quote unquote, just a pigeonhole type of player who just has one role.
Yeah, I think Nick Sirianni's comments about Quez today were interesting. And to me, when you look at the Eagles did not make any moves at the receiver position in free agency, they let Zach Pascal go. Yes, could they draft a player in the 4th round, like a Michael Wilson from Stanford that can compete with Quez? For sure. I think they're going to do that. And I think Watkins fits more of a rotational 3 with another player. It's almost like a committee at wide receiver 3. But at the same time, Gino, I think they're going to give him another shot next year because I don't think they're going to take a receiver in the 1st or 2nd round to be that 3rd guy. They're not going to invest that when they have Devontae, AJ, and Dallas eating up targets in this offense. So I think Quez is going to get another shot next year. Sirianni was pretty bullish on him. And again, I'm bullish on Quez too because of his traits. I think he's the perfect type of 4th offensive player. We said this all last offseason because he doesn't need to do a lot with 10 touches. He needs 1 or 2. So I know he was really bad last year down the stretch, but I hope that 2021 Quez can come back, man, because that would be just the perfect player for this offense.
It would be ideal. Or do they even trade him, Lou? I mean, there were talks about that.
Yeah.
And you don't know going into the draft.
I think it would probably be a post-draft move, Gino, because right now, I mean, he's the outside of Quez, it's what? You have Britton Covey, and that's it.
Right, unless you're going to trade him for a day 3 pick, and that pick is going to be the wide receiver that you're going to replace him with. And there's not really a ton of guys out there in free agency now. The Mecole Hardmans of the world are gone, right? And
Nelson Aguilar signed with Baltimore.
Yeah, that would have been a great reunion there. But the thing is, you got to believe in these guys, right? And sometimes a down year does happen, and he was finding a new role that wasn't what he was used to. He was more of a 2, an outside receiver.
Wasn't touching the ball a lot, Gino. I'm sure that's got to be hard to get into a rhythm. And, again, the silver lining, he did step up those first few weeks that Dallas Goedert went down. He made some plays against, those touchdowns against the Colts and the Packers. So I don't want to get rid of Quez Watkins just for a late 7th round selection. If you would have signed like a Mecole Hardman, then I would have understood. But I'm kind of with Nick Sirianni on giving this kid one more shot next year. And it's not again, Gino, the thing is, it's not a deal breaker. This isn't 2021 where you need Quez in this offense. You have those top 3 guys. So it's kind of like the signings of, Greedy Williams and, last year with Trey Sermon and, all these different players that are buy low, but, they have a high upside is you can't really get hurt from giving them a shot.
That's exactly it. And that's what Philadelphia is. And now out of necessity, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be find the guys that are skill position players that have 1 or 2 respective traits that you believe you can build on with a low cost dollar sign attached.
That's what a role player in the NFL is anyway. Gino.
It has to be.
They're not complete players.
No, there is not a complete player in the league, one, and there never is going to be, especially in those guys that are late round picks and guys that are making the 3rd and 4th positional value on your respective roster.
I think you're getting really picky, Gino, if you want your 4th weapon on offense to be this complete star. Obviously you don't settle, but again, I think Watkins has the traits to be that nice complement, but he just can't hurt you as much as he did last year at the end. That's the thing. So a role player like that, they're not going to save you, but he hurt you a lot. And that Super Bowl drop is the big one people will remember. But we'll see what happens. Sirianni sounds like he's still a Quez believer. The draft will tell us for sure, though, too, Gino, how they feel about Watkins and the long-term, position of receiver on the depth chart. Coming up next, we're going to wrap up the show talking about some rule changes that the Eagles, they pushed one through. One of theirs did get denied by the league. So that's coming up next right here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
And this Tuesday edition of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now is your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for the peanut butter brownie bar. Of course, Lou. I think we're on the same wavelength there. And if you support the Eagles and you want to see them win, you'll be voting for that bar as well. Support your team, support your bar or puff. When you go and vote, you're going to do it for free, and you will also be entered for free to get one of 50 one of 50 free boxes of Built Bar. On top of that, you'll also be entered to be a 1 of 1 winner to get a 12-month subscription to have Built Bars delivered directly to your house for 12 months straight. What is better than that? You got to try Built Bar. Built is the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're amazing. They're the only one that I have. I've been back in the gym trying to get ready for my wedding. I need something to kick my sweet tooth. I get Built Bars all the time. There's a constant flow of them to my house. Every time I look at my Blink camera, it is a Built Bar box getting delivered. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar. Choose that peanut butter brownie to rock with us here at LOE.
All right, everybody, we're wrapping up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Louis DiBiase, Gino Camilleri. Time to talk some rule changes, Gino. The Eagles, I love the Eagles for so many reasons, but one of the cool things about this team, they're always forward thinking. Even in rule changes, they've had some fun rules the last few years. They are the pioneers behind getting all these throwback jerseys, right? The 2-helmet rule. That was a Jeffrey Lurie thing. And now we get to see Kelly Green in 2023, which I cannot wait for. And you saw this year, another fun rule change Philly proposed was accepted. Players can now in the NFL wear number 0. And I think that is awesome. To me, I'm all about jersey freedom, number freedom. Let guys do it. That's what I love about college football and even soccer is they're very open with that kind of. I mean, your favorite college team, the Oregon Ducks, right? I mean, look at all the combos they have. I'm a big fan of this, Gino. I think it's a huge aesthetic, a huge vibe. It's a look good, play good for sure promotion for some of these skill position guys that are going to rock number 0. I wonder on the Eagles who's going to get that number.
It's not going to be Jalen.
No, it's Devontae's 6.
It could be one of the running backs, maybe. I don't know.
Rashad Penny?
Could be. That could
That'd be pretty
that.
Cool.
But American sports are strange in that we retire jerseys that can never be worn again, right?
Yeah,
and
they got to stop that.
Like in international soccer, like the number 10 is the one number everybody wants, and you could have retired the number 10 over across every single club on earth at this point. But American sports, you're running out of numbers. I mean, the Yankees, as a Yankee fan, I don't think they have single digits left for people to wear. You got to continue to expand. I mean, at what point are we going to see somebody wearing 100? I bet somebody will in the NFL. And
I think they got to just stop retiring jerseys and do what Chris Long suggested, which is like a number wall of fame. You know, and still you can still put the jerseys in the rafters. You retire you put them in the Hall of Fame.
Lacrosse does that with the number 22. So they give that number to their highest prospect or their best player going into that year. And they just retired, I think, their 3rd or 4th number 22, which they do in soccer all the time with the number 10 or not. Exactly. I think you should do that as well in the NFL because I mean, heck, look at the Steelers or the Eagles. I mean, these teams are going to run out of numbers.
I don't want to start having skill position players have to wear number 42 or 46. You know what I mean? Like you said with the Yankees, that's just not ideal. But I think it's awesome that number 0 is coming in. I would love to see one of those running backs get it. Hey, maybe Quez Watkins. Here's a way to bounce back in 2023. Rock number 0. I don't know if a defensive player would do it.
James Bradbury
will be. Gino, hold on. What if they draft your boy Christian Gonzalez from Oregon?
Oh, Lou. That's an instant cop. That's an instant cop. Day one.
So maybe, I don't know, Marcus Mariota, if he doesn't get number 8, he could rock 0.
Marcus would be all right with the 0.
It's cool, though. I love that this rule passed. Gino, unfortunately, I think for most people, they wanted this rule. The Eagles proposed an onside alternative, which would have been a 4th and 20, where the offense can choose onside kick or a 4th and 20 conversion. If they get it, they get the ball back. Where did you stand on? I feel like 4th and 15 was for the likes of Jalen Hurts now, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Lawrence. These guys are incredible. 15 yards maybe was, I don't like that onside's like a 1% success rate basically, but I think 4th and 15 is too much of a hike in the predictability or the probability of converting that. 4th and 20, I feel like was a nice middle ground. Maybe, 4th and 25, where I would have liked to see that be passed because onside kicks, they're basically a non-starter. They don't work.
I think the XFL and the USFL are doing a good job expanding and trying to explore in those areas. And there has to be a middle ground, Lou, because you want to see those exciting situations, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the spirit of March Madness, one of the great things about it is those last second things, those last second victory, those last second moments where you're saying, how the heck did that happen with 0.6 left on the clock? Right. A lot of the times when there's an onside kick after a big touchdown, you inevitably know what's going to happen. Maybe you back the returners up 5 yards, and when it goes to 10 yards, both teams can go get it. There has to be a middle ground. The 4th and 15 would have been awesome. I think that is like the Hail Mary, chuck it up from half court type of thing where, I mean, 4th and 26 is one of the greatest moments in Eagles history, right? And just a chip in a chair is all you need that late in the game. And the NFL has to do something. It's the premier product, and the biggest moment comes down to something that happens 1 out of 100 times or 3 out of 100 times. They got to do better than that.
And maybe it's only like you're allowed to do it once in a game. Maybe it's only allowed in the 4th quarter, just so teams aren't constantly going for 4th and 20s to get the ball back. And a team never gets the ball back when somebody else scores. But I don't know. I feel like there is, like you said, a middle ground where they just got to find an alternative to the onside kick. Because again, I know there's onsides that they are converted, but like 99% of the time, it doesn't work. I feel like there's got to be, I don't want a team to be able to get the ball back with like a 50-50 shot for sure. Like I don't want a 4th and 10, but there's got to be something in the middle here. And I thought this was a good proposal by the Eagles. The NFL didn't approve it this year. It's been coming back to the table a few years in a row, kind of like the 2 helmet proposal. So maybe in 2024 it does come back, but I definitely think they got to do something. I'm just glad the Eagles are pretty much leading the charge for the NFL not being the no fun league.
Yeah, Jeffrey Lurie will just kind of continue to nudge you in the side with these rules until they pass.
I love it.
With the 2 helmet rule, we knew it was going to inevitably happen because he wasn't putting it to bed. And why would you not? It helps you make more money, just like the jersey rule as well. Man. I mean, would more overtime situations because of this proposed 4th and 15 or 4th and 20 help you make more money, help you sell more concessions? 100%. Why the NFL wouldn't continue to do that and be the no fun league?
I don't know.
I'm just glad the Eagles they're continuing to be the leader of the independents,
That's right.
America started in Philly. America's going to keep running through the National Football League, which runs through Philly as always.
They also did not ban the tush push QB sneak, so
thank goodness.
So that's big too for the Eagles when it comes to non-rule changes. That one for sure, sticking around in 2023. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Gino and I will be back tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, Monday through Friday. We got a show for you on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Got a lot of draft content for you these next 4 weeks. So make sure Locked On Eagles is your first listen every day, but also make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the draft dudes, from free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. You can find Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft dudes wherever you get Locked On Eagles. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.